Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I've had quite a few people ask me in the past about my connection with Frank Bruno, how we met, etc, etc. So I thought today would be a good time, while I've got 10 minutes before we go out and see a show in Tenerife, that I would jump on and just do a quick video. So basically I reckon I was about 14, maybe a little bit earlier than that, and I was in Emerson Park, and I saw Frank out running, big fella running along, and I thought, blimey, he's a lump. I think I was on a bike with a mate of mine, and we obviously realised who he was because he was coming up for, I think, European titles at the time. And obviously I've followed boxing my whole life. I've boxed from the age of 5, and I was still boxing up until December recently, when I sustained an injury while I was sparring. Quite a severe injury that I'm still having therapy for, and it's still causing all sorts of problems with my left arm. Anyway, without rattling on about that, so basically the Frank Bruno situation, shouted out to him as he was running by, and he stopped, and I think he signed us a photograph. I think he had a couple of photographs on him and gave us a signed photograph. That was the first time I ever saw or met him in person. A couple of years later, I think I was about 16, and he'd done some charity work. And my father had a pub in the same area where he used to live. He won't mind me mentioning it because it was quite widely publicised that he used to live in Hornchurch in Essex. And my father had a pub in Hornchurch in Essex called the Cricketers at the time, which has since changed name. And as I understand it, the pub's actually up for sale again now. So basically, Frank come along and done a charity day. We was raising money for a local hospice, I think it was, or a charity of a, I can't remember, it was so long ago now, hospital or something like that. And we'd been raising money in this massive glass jar. It was huge, this jar, and it had loads of coins in it and change in it and notes in it and stuff like that. I can't remember the exact figure, but was well over £1,000, I think. And we'd been, just had it in the centre of the bar, and it was people put a little bit of change in when they got the change from their drinks and stuff. They'd pop a 50p in there, 20p in there, £1 in there, or whatever. Anyway, it come to the point where we was giving over, I believe it was to a hospice, a local hospice, but I might be wrong. Could be Old Church, I can't remember. Anyway, it come to the day where we was gonna had a couple of newspapers there and bits and bobs, and Frank kindly agreed to pop along because it was local to him, to open the tip the jar into a great big blanket. He was a mutual friend of a greengrocer that my parents used for the pub, so that's originally how we met. His name was Terry, and we met Frank through Terry. Anyway, he popped along to the jar, the charity event, was tipping the jar over to get all the money into this blanket, and the whole thing shattered. I mean, it absolutely disintegrated with the weight of the change and stuff that was in there. Something's telling me it was £1,700, but I might be wrong. I might be wrong on that. Tipped it over, smashed to pieces. My dad immediately stressed out because obviously Frank was coming up to a world title fight here. And, a shard of glass could have easily cut his wrist or cut a tendon or something in his hands and stuff. His career would have been over. It was that serious. It really, really did smash. Thankfully, Frank had no problems. He'd let go, obviously, quite quick reactions, let go of the jar when it was smashing, and there you go. So that was the first time I actually ever met him. Afterwards, I used to have a gym upstairs in the pub that I used to train, and I had a punch bag up there, speedball, ground to ceiling ball, multi-gym, some weights, a skipping area, bits and bobs. And Frank, after the charity thing, popped upstairs and he signed my multi-gym for me, which was quite nice at the time, because obviously I was well into boxing and he was coming up for, a world title fight. And so anyway, that was that. And we met, and I had a chat with him, and he said, "Oh, are you into your boxing and bits and bobs?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm going up to Canning Town tomorrow for having a train. If you want to come up, I'll pick you up on the way through." I thought, fantastic, why not? So went up there. I didn't actually train. I just sat there and watched, and he was training. There was Gary Mason was there, Horace Notice was there, some really good British fighters. Mark Taylor was there. I can't remember who else. There was a few others there, training professionally up in Canning Town, the Royal Oak pub. Went up there with him, and afterwards he got a phone call. He was going to go and do a charity. I think it was a charity shop opening or an appearance or something. This was, as I say, you have to excuse my memory. It was quite a few years ago, coming up to 4 decades ago now. Anyway, he said to me, "Look, I can run you home if you want, and then I can go off." Or he said, "Or we can go and get something to eat, and then you can come up." It was in Kent, I believe. It was a clothing line, a clothing shop that was opening. He said, "You come up with me and we'll do the thing and I'll drop you back after." I said, "Yeah, why not?" I didn't have nothing to do, it was fantastic. Just hung out, went and got something to eat. I think he paid for it, or I did. Can't remember if Frank's watching. I know he does watch this channel, so he probably will see this. In fact, I'll send him a link so he can actually see this. Jog a few memories for him. So that was how we first met. We've done the charity, the shop opening, or whether it's a charity, or again, I can't remember. Drove back to the pub. He dropped me off. A week later, I went back up to Canning Town with him. Had a little train. I think I had a little train at that time. Anyway, that's how we first met. Stayed in touch, bits and bobs like that. This is completely unscripted, so you'll have to bear with me if I go a bit flaky at times with memory. So then we just stayed in touch, and he'd come up the pub every now and then. He would only ever have a Perrier water. That was all he ever used to drink. Occasionally he'd have half a Guinness with blackcurrant in it, and it was going forward. Anyway, stayed in touch. As things progressed, I used to go to all the fights. So me and my dad would get some tickets through Frank. We'd sometimes travel up with the family. Sometimes we'd go up and stay up in a hotel and bits and bobs like that. I'd see Frank generally before the fight, and generally sometimes we'd go out for a meal or something after the fight, depending where it was. But I started going to most of his fights, literally all of his fights. So I was seeing him quite a bit. We went on holiday together. We've been to various spas and bits and bobs like that, Champney spas. He gets obviously looked after by Champneys, and we get the treatments and bits and bobs like that. There was one time we was in Champneys in Tring, I think it was, and we went into this. It was like a freezer room. All I can describe is it's cold. You go into, first of all, you have to sort of put on some clothing. You have to put on clogs because your feet would stick to the floor, literally. You have to have some socks on, but pretty much you're going in your swimming trunks. You have to have a headband on, and you stand in front of a fan before you go in there. It's like a hydro freezer thing. I can't exactly remember the name of it. Excuse me again. Getting old and got punched in the head too much, I think. And you stand in front of a fan so that you've not got no sweat glands on you before you go into the first section of the room. And that, I think, is... Again, you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to sort of, guess the figures. I think it's about -80, something like that, in the first room. And then you go through to the other room. Now, generally, you can only be in there 3 or 4 minutes before your whole body. I mean, as soon as you step into the really cold room, and that's something like a -127. It might even be more like 170. It's absolutely freezing. And you just walk round in a little circle. Your body starts to shut down. There's people watching you as soon as you walk in there, because obviously it is cold. And basically what the idea of it is it opens up all of your veins and all of your senses, because your body's trying to stay alive. And it starts to shut down as soon as you walk in there. Well, we had a session of 3 people, and there was myself, Frank, and Sherry Blair, Tony Blair's wife, was in the same session. And met Sherry Blair, started talking, a little bit about politics and stuff. I made it quite clear that I wasn't a particular Labour supporter. So anyway, she was a very nice person, very polite, very friendly, very warm. She'd already met Frank before, so it was quite easy. The ice was broken. They hadn't just met for the first time. And Tony Blair was at the time the Prime Minister. So I think she had a couple of people with her, obviously close protection and stuff like that. Anyway, done all the session and stuff like that, and we was at the spa for 2 or 3 days. Had some nice, saunas and steams. Frank's very into looking after himself. He likes to train every day, so he was in the gym quite a bit. We was having saunas and steams and bits and bobs like that. We also, in later life, when he'd finished boxing, we went for a Caribbean cruise. I think we went East and West Caribbean, so we took a flight to Miami. A friend of mine I won't mention his name, was quite high up in a particular cruise company, and we was invited on there, myself and Frank and a couple of friends, to have a 10-day, 12-day cruise, which was really lovely. Frank had finished boxing, and things were okay, and he was in good spirits at the time. Obviously, there's been some downsides to Frank's health, as it's been well documented, well publicised. He's had some, health issues, mental health issues, which he's been very open about, and I've been there for him during those times. I was with him the day before he was ever sectioned. On the first day, he was calling me. The day that the ambulances had turned up, but I was at work at the time. I wasn't self-employed at that time. I was working, and I didn't have my phone with me. It was in my locker or my bag or my coat or something. And when I listened to the voice messages, it was too late at the time because he'd been taken away, and he was sectioned in hospital at the time, which was quite stressful. I visited him a couple of times during his stay, or his detention in the hospital, and this went on a couple of other times. And Frank himself admits, he has to keep himself fit. It's an illness. It's like anything, isn't it? You can't control. If you've got a broken arm, you go to the doctors or you go to the hospital to try and get it mended. It's the same thing with your head. If your head's not right, and you get sometimes a little chemical imbalance and things go a little bit south. He looked at his health, and for him it works very well for him to stay physically fit. He's still trains solid to this day. I think he's 63 or 64 at the moment, and there's not an ounce of fat on him. He looks after himself. He really, really does, and that's his way of dealing with his health issues. I still speak to Frank quite regularly. I've seen him when I've been flying back to the UK. I go and visit him at the house. We go out for something to eat. We see each other, not as much as we used to. Going back in the day, we had a Fitness First. I don't even know if that gym chain is still going now, but Fitness First basically gave myself and Frank, I'll get it the right way round, Frank and myself, a free membership for 3 years. So I used to go down to the gym, because obviously we went to Romford, we went to Basildon, to the gyms, and we used to go in there. We used to go up in the studios. There was a punch bag up there and stuff, so we used to work out together quite a lot. Again, saunas, jacuzzis, steams and stuff like that. We used to try and go in the quieter times so that he wasn't mobbed, because he was still a big name, and even if people don't know he's there, as soon as he speaks or laughs, he's got such a distinctive voice. Going back again, he helped me when I first opened up my Czech business in Romford. He come along to the opening, cut the ribbon, had all the press there. He very kindly done a radio advertisement for me. He's been very, very kind to me, Frank, and I hope I've played my part in trying to help him out in his various things as well when we've been on holiday and bits and bobs like that. He's had a series of books written. The last two I've featured quite heavily in. One of them was Let Me Be Frank. If you haven't seen that, I believe you can still buy them. And the last book that he done was 60 Years a Fighter. I think there's still copies available, if they're still available now, from his website. So that's frankbruno.co.uk. So you can always go and get one of those books. I think you can get them signed as well, which is nice. And I'll feature in both of those books quite heavily. So it's just a little brief insight. We've done a lot of sparring. We used to spar at home when he used to live in Brentwood many years ago. He had one of the swimming pools where the cover went across automatically, and they used to advertise it that you could park a Bentley on there. So me and Frank used to go on there and spar. It was a little bit like being in a ring, really, but quite unstable, but it was good for balance and bits and bobs like that. There was talk, and he asked me at one stage to arrange for a comeback for him. I think this was when his health was in decline. I spoke to Barry Hearn at the time, and he said to me, Dan, do yourself a favour, put your arm around Frank and say, let's call it a day. The money's not in it anymore. Now it is, but back then it wasn't in it. And I think Barry genuinely didn't want to see Frank return to the ring, like so many fighters are doing nowadays. They all seem to be making comebacks and stuff, and it's not good for their past, it's not good for their legacy, it's not good for their health. So fortunately it never happened. When Frank retired, he did stay retired. When he finally announced that he's definitely retired. He stayed retired. He stayed true to his word. Just a little insight into our boxing past. As I say, I speak to Frank all the time. I spoke to him he called me a couple of days after the recent Usyk Dubois fight to have a chat about things. Hopefully he's going to come out and see us in Spain soon, so it'd be nice to show him around where we live. I've got a little guest house, and he's going to stay there when he does eventually come out. He's obviously ducking and diving all the time, as he puts it, so when the time's right, he'll pop out, and who knows, one day I might even get a quick hello on the channel from him. So just thought I'd touch on that, guys. Well, I've got a little while before we head out to see our friend Johnny Circus in his show tonight. He's a Charlie Chaplin act, and very funny, and I will be filming it and bringing it to you on this channel. So thank you very much for joining me on this one. I hope I haven't rabbited on too much. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. The channel's growing slowly but still nicely and steadily, so any shares and any likes and stuff help the algorithms and help the channel grow. Thank you very much for joining me. As I say, it was an unscripted thing, so I just wanted to jump on and just give you a little insight into the connection with boxing and Frank Bruno. Speak to you soon, guys.